Vexara had been on the station for 3 weeks now, and she still could not understand humans. The young Deshan sat in the corner of the academy cafeteria, her green scales catching the artificial light as she watched the strange creatures move around the room. Her people had sent her here as part of the Galactic Union's exchange program. It was supposed to be an honor, a chance to learn about the newest species to join their great civilization, but nobody had warned her about how confusing humans would be. She watched as a human male walked past her table. He was tall, with brown hair and an easy smile. His name was Jake Morrison, and he worked as a teaching assistant in the biology department. He carried a tray of food and sat down at a table where a human female was already eating. The female's name was Amy Chun. She was a medical student with long black hair and a gentle voice. Vexara had spoken to her once, and Amy had been very kind. But right now, Vexara was not thinking about kindness. She was thinking about something that had been bothering her for days. Jake and Amy were sitting very close to each other. They were laughing and talking. At one point, Jake reached over and touched Amy's hand. It was a small gesture, but Vexara's eyes went wide when she saw it. This was wrong. This was very wrong. On her home world, males and females did not interact like this outside of the mating season. The mating season came once a year, lasted for exactly 12 days, and during that time, males would undergo dramatic changes. Their scales would turn bright colors. Their voices would deepen. They would become aggressive and territorial. It was biology. It was nature. It was the way things worked for almost every intelligent species in the galaxy. But humans did not seem to follow these rules. Vexara had been watching them carefully. She had taken notes. She had made observations. And she had come to a troubling conclusion. Human males did not change. They looked the same every day. They acted the same every day. They did not fight each other for territory. They did not display bright colors to attract females. They just existed. Calmly, peacefully. It made no sense. Vexara picked up her data pad and looked at her notes again. She had recorded every interaction she had witnessed between human males and females. They touched each other casually. They ate meals together. They worked side by side in laboratories and classrooms. And it was not just Jake and Amy, it was all of them. She had seen human males and females walking together in the corridors. She had seen them exercising together in the fitness center. She had even seen them sharing sleeping quarters in the residential section. At first, Vexara had assumed that humans must have a very long mating season. Perhaps it lasted for several months instead of several days. That would explain why the males were always so calm around females. But then she had done some research. She had looked up everything she could find about human biology in the Academy's database. And what she found only confused her more. There was no information about a human mating season. None at all. This had to be a mistake. Perhaps humans were a private species. Perhaps they did not share such personal information with outsiders. That would make sense. Many species kept their reproductive habits secret, but Vexara needed to know. It was not just curiosity. It was a matter of safety. If human males had a mating season, she needed to know when it was. She needed to prepare. On her world, females stayed away from males during the mating time unless they wanted to start a family. The males became unpredictable, dangerous. Even. What if humans were the same? What if their mating season was about to begin? What if Jake Morrison suddenly turned aggressive and started fighting with other males? Vexara shuddered at the thought. Humans were already larger and stronger than most species. The idea of them becoming even more aggressive was terrifying. She needed answers. Across the cafeteria, Jake finished his meal and stood up. He said something to Amy that made her laugh, then picked up his tray and headed toward the exit. This was her chance. Vexara stood up quickly, almost knocking over her chair. Her tail swished nervously behind her as she hurried across the room. She caught up with Jake, just as he was placing his tray on the cleaning station. "Excuse me," she said. Her voice came out higher than she intended. "Jake Morrison?" Jake turned around and smiled at her. It was a friendly smile, open and warm. "Hey, Vexara. What's up?" Vexara hesitated. She had rehearsed this conversation in her mind many times, but now that the moment had arrived, she was not sure how to begin. "I have a question," she said finally. "About human biology." "Sure," Jake said. He leaned against the wall and crossed his arms in a relaxed pose. "I'm not an expert, but I'll help if I can." Vexara took a deep breath. Her scale shifted from green to a slightly blue shade, which happened when she was nervous. "When does your mating season begin?" She asked. Jake blinked for a long moment. He did not say anything. He just stared at her with a strange expression on his face. Then he coughed. "I'm sorry," he said. "Could you repeat that?" "Your mating season," Vexara said again. She spoke slowly and clearly, thinking that perhaps she had not pronounced the words correctly. "I wish to know when it begins. I want to observe proper protocols." Jake's face turned a strange color. It went from its normal pale shade to something pinker. His eyes were very wide. "Proper protocols?" He repeated. "Yes," Vexara said. She was starting to worry that she had offended him somehow. "I mean no disrespect. I simply want to be prepared. On my world, females must be careful during the mating season. Males can become intense." Jake opened his mouth. Then he closed it again. He looked like he was trying very hard not to laugh, but also like he might choke. "Vexara," he said slowly. "Humans don't have a mating season." Now it was Vexara's turn to stare. "I do not understand," she said. "We don't have one," Jake said again. We're able to... Look, we don't have a specific time of year for that stuff. It's not seasonal for us." Vexara's scales turned bright blue. Her tail stopped moving completely. "That cannot be correct," she said. "All species have a mating season. It is biology. It is nature." Jake shook his head. "Not humans. We're kind of always available, I guess. If that makes sense?" It did not make sense. It did not make any sense at all. Vexara felt dizzy. The room seemed to spin around her. She reached out and grabbed the edge of a nearby table to steady herself. "Are you okay?" Jake asked. He sounded worried now. "I need to sit down," Vexara whispered. She was not okay. Her entire understanding of biology had just been shattered. And she had a terrible feeling that this was only the beginning. The news spread through the alien student community like fire through dry grass. Vexara had told her study partner, Corvin, about her conversation with Jake. Corvin was a Dralith, an insectoid species with large compound eyes and delicate antennae. When he heard what Jake had said, his antennae went completely stiff. "That is impossible," Corvin clicked. His species communicated through a mixture of clicks and whistles, though he wore a translator device that converted his words into common speech. "You must have misunderstood." "I did not misunderstand," Vexara insisted. He said it clearly. "Humans do not have a mating season." "But every species has a mating season," Corvin said. "Even the Vakari, and they are birds. Even the Melocs, and they reproduce through spores. There must be some cycle, some pattern." "That is what I thought," Vexara said. But Jake said no. He said humans are always ready. Corvin made a high-pitched whistle of alarm. "Always? Throughout the entire year?" "That is what he said." The two of them sat in silence for a long moment. Around them, the academy library was quiet. Other students moved between the shelves, searching for data files and research materials. None of them knew about the biological bombshell that had just been dropped. "We need to verify this," Corvin said finally. "We need official confirmation." Vexara nodded. "I agree. But how?" "We should speak to Professor Thelrix," Corvin suggested. "He is the head of the biology department. If anyone knows the truth about human reproduction, it would be him." It was a good idea. Professor Thelrix was a Vexara, an ancient avian species known for their wisdom and patience. He had been teaching at the academy for over 40 years. Surely he would have answers. They found the professor in his office. He was a tall creature with silver feathers and sharp yellow eyes. When Vexara explained why they had come, his feathers ruffled in what she recognized as surprise. "You are asking about human reproductive cycles?" Thelrix said. His voice was soft and musical, like wind through hollow tubes. "Yes, Professor," Vexara said. "A human told me that his species does not have a mating season. I thought perhaps he was joking, or that I misunderstood." Thelrix was quiet for a moment. His eyes blinked slowly, one at a time. "I have heard rumors about this," he admitted. "When humans first joined the Galactic Union, there was much discussion about their biology. But I confess that I did not pay close attention. I assumed the reports were exaggerated." "So you do not know for certain?" Corvin asked. "I do not," Thelrix said. "But I know someone who does. Dr. Lisa Grant teaches xenobiology here at the Academy. She is human. If anyone can give us accurate information, it is her." He stood up from his perch and stretched his wings. "I will arrange a meeting. This is a matter of academic importance. If humans truly lack a mating season, the entire scientific community needs to know." The meeting was scheduled for the following day. Word had somehow gotten out, and when Vexara arrived at Dr. Grant's office, she found that she was not alone. There were at least 20 other alien students waiting outside. Some were species she recognized, others were not. All of them looked curious and slightly nervous. "Is it true?" a small furry creature asked her. Vexara did not know his species, but he had large ears and a twitching nose. "Do humans really mate all year round?" "I do not know," Vexara said. "That is why we are here." The door to Dr. Grant's office opened, and Professor Thelrix stepped out. "There are too many of you," he announced. "We will move this discussion to Lecture Hall 7. Dr. Grant has agreed to give a formal presentation." A formal presentation. This was getting serious. Lecture Hall 7 was one of the largest rooms in the Academy. It could hold over 200 students. By the time Vexara found a seat, the room was already half full, and more were arriving every minute. She spotted Jake Morrison standing near the back of the room. His friend Ben Tucker was with him, along with Amy Chun. All three humans were watching the growing crowd with strange expressions on their faces. Vexara thought Jake looked embarrassed. Ben looked like he was trying very hard not to laugh. Amy just looked resigned, like someone who had expected this to happen eventually. Finally, Dr. Lisa Grant walked onto the stage. She was a human female in her middle years, with short brown hair and calm gray eyes. She wore the standard uniform of Academy faculty and carried a small device for displaying information. "Good afternoon," she said. Her voice was steady and professional. "I understand there has been some confusion about human biology. I am here to clear things up." The room fell silent. Every eye, whether compound, slitted, or round, was focused on her. "I have been told that many of you are curious about human reproductive cycles," Dr. Grant continued. "Specifically, you want to know about our mating season." She paused and looked out at the audience. "The answer is simple," she said. "Humans do not have a mating season. We are capable of reproduction at any time of year." For a moment, nothing happened. The room was completely still. Then chaos erupted. Alien students began talking all at once. Some stood up from their seats. Others made sounds of shock and disbelief in their native languages. Corvin's antennae were vibrating so fast they were almost invisible. The small furry creature from earlier had fainted and was being fanned by his friends. Dr. Grant raised her hand for silence. It took several minutes for the room to calm down. "I understand this is surprising," she said. "For most species in the galaxy, reproduction is tied to seasonal cycles. Hormones rise and fall with the changing of celestial bodies. Males undergo physical changes. Females become receptive only during specific periods." She clicked a button on her device, and a diagram appeared on the screen behind her. "Humans evolved differently," she explained. "On our home world, we face constant threats from predators and harsh environments. Our survival depended on having children whenever conditions were favorable, not just during specific seasons." Another click, another diagram. "As a result, human males do not experience seasonal hormonal changes. They do not become aggressive or territorial during specific times of year. They remain consistent." A hand shot up from the audience. It belonged to a tall, blue-skinned being with 4 arms. "You are saying," the being said slowly, "that human males are always in a state of readiness?" Dr. Grant nodded. "In simple terms, yes." The blue being sat down heavily. His 4 hands were shaking. Another question came from somewhere in the middle of the room. "How often can humans reproduce?" "Theoretically," Dr. Grant said, "a human female could have a child every year for several decades." This time, Vexara was among those who nearly fainted. Her scales had turned a shade of blue so dark it was almost purple. Her heart was beating so fast she could feel it in her throat. Every year. For decades, she looked at Jake Morrison again. He was standing in the back of the room, his face red with embarrassment. He was not a seasonal creature. He was not bound by biological cycles. He was something far more terrifying. He was always capable. And suddenly, Vexara understood why humans had spread so quickly across their home world. Why their population had grown so large. Why they had developed so many different cultures and societies. They were not limited by seasons. They were not controlled by cycles. They were free. And that was the most frightening thing she had ever heard. The lecture continued for another 2 hours. Dr. Grant answered every question with patience and scientific precision. She explained human hormones, human development, human courtship rituals. She described something called dating, which seemed to involve 2 humans spending time together to determine if they were compatible. "Wait," a Melox student interrupted. The Melox were a fungal species, and this one's spore sacs were pulsing with agitation. "You are telling us that humans interact romantically before deciding to reproduce?" "That is correct," Dr. Grant said. "But why?" The Melox asked. "What is the purpose of interaction if not reproduction?" Dr. Grant smiled slightly. "Humans form pair bonds for many reasons: companionship, emotional support, shared interests. Reproduction is only one aspect of romantic relationships for us." The room erupted into confused murmuring again. Vexara was writing notes as fast as her claws could move. None of this made sense, and yet all of it was fascinating. Her people form pair bonds too, but only during and after the mating season. The idea of bonding with someone outside of that biological window was strange and wonderful. Dr. Grant, Professor Thelrix called from his seat in the front row. "May I ask a follow-up question?" "Of course, Professor. You mentioned that human males do not undergo physical changes during reproductive periods," Thelrix said. "But surely there must be some visible signs when a human male is interested in mating?" Dr. Grant thought about this for a moment. "There are some subtle signs," she admitted. "Increased attention to a potential partner. Nervous behavior, Sometimes physical responses, like elevated heart rate or flushed skin. But these are not dramatic changes like what other species experience. So a human male could be interested in mating, Thelric said slowly, and no one around him would know? That is correct. The room fell silent. Vexara could see alien students looking at the humans in the room with new eyes. There were about a dozen humans present, scattered throughout the audience. They all looked perfectly normal, calm, relaxed. But according to Dr. Grant, any one of them could be thinking about mating at any moment. And no one would be able to tell. It was deeply unsettling. A Drala student near Corvin raised a thin arm. Dr. Grant, I have a question about human females. Go ahead. Do human females also lack a mating season? Are they also always available? Dr. Grant nodded. Human females do have monthly cycles related to fertility, but these cycles continue throughout the year, not just during specific seasons. And like human males, human females can feel romantic and physical attraction at any time. At any time, the Dralith repeated. His voice was barely a whisper. Both males and females. Always. Yes. The Dralith made a sound like breaking glass and had to be helped out of the room by his friends. After the lecture ended, Vexara sat in her seat for a long time. The room slowly emptied around her, but she could not move. Her mind was trying to process everything she had learned, and it was not easy. She thought about her own people. Deshans were considered a passionate species by galactic standards. Their mating season was intense and emotional, but it only lasted 12 days per year. The rest of the time, males and females lived separately, focused on their work and their communities. Humans did not have that separation. They lived together all the time. They worked together, ate together, slept in the same buildings. They were constantly surrounded by potential mates, constantly exposed to romantic possibilities. How did they get anything done? Hey, Vexara looked up. Jake Morrison was standing in the aisle next to her seat. He looked uncomfortable, but his eyes were kind. Are you okay? He asked. You've been sitting here for a while. Vexara opened her mouth to answer, but no words came out. She closed it again and tried to organize her thoughts. I am processing, she said finally. Jake nodded. He sat down in the seat next to her, leaving a respectful distance between them. I know this is a lot to take in, he said. Dr. Grant told me that most alien species react this way when they learn about human biology. It's one of the reasons we don't talk about it much. You do not talk about it? Vexara said. Why not? Because it makes people uncomfortable, Jake said. He shrugged. We're already considered strange by most species. We're from a death world. We eat poison for fun. We keep predators as pets. Adding no mating season to the list just seemed like overkill. Vexara considered this. Humans were indeed strange. Their home planet was classified as a Class 4 death world, full of dangerous weather, poisonous plants, and deadly animals. The fact that humans had survived there was impressive. The fact that they had thrived was almost miraculous. May I ask you something? She said. Sure. How do you control yourselves? Jake looked confused. What do you mean? You are surrounded by potential mates all the time, Vexara said. You feel attraction constantly. How do you stop yourselves from acting on it? Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed softly. It's not like we're fighting constant urges, he said. We just have self-control. We learn it as we grow up. We understand that attraction doesn't mean we have to act on it. We can appreciate someone without pursuing them. We can work alongside someone we find attractive without it affecting our judgment. But how? Vexara pressed. During our mating season, males lose much of their rational thought. They become driven by instinct. You are saying that human males never experience this? Not really, Jake said. I mean, we can be distracted sometimes. We're not robots. But we don't lose control. We don't become different people. Oh. Vexara stared at him. On her world, the mating season transformed males completely. Gentle scholars became aggressive warriors. Calm leaders became territorial protectors. It was biology, and there was no fighting it. But humans had no such transformation. Human males like Jake were the same person every day of the year. They could work, think, create, and build without being interrupted by overwhelming biological drives. That is incredible, she whispered. Jake looked embarrassed. It's just how we are, he said. It's not special to us, but it was special. Vexara could see that now. The lack of a mating season was not a weakness or an oddity. It was a strength. It meant that humans could focus on long-term goals without interruption. It meant they could form deep, lasting relationships based on more than just biological timing. It explained so much about human society. Their rapid technological development, their complex social structures, their ability to cooperate across genders year-round. They were not limited by seasons. They were free to build, create, and grow whenever they wanted. Thank you, Vexara said suddenly. Jake blinked. For what? For explaining, she said. For being patient with me. I know my questions were strange. Not strange, Jake said with a smile. Just different. We all have things to learn about each other. That's what this exchange program is for, right? Vexara nodded. Yes, that was exactly what the program was for. And she was starting to realize that she had learned something far more important than she had expected. Humans were not just survivors of a death world. They were not just strong and stubborn and strangely resistant to poison. They were free from biological chains that bound every other species in the galaxy. And that made them the most remarkable creatures Vexara had ever met. The days following the lecture were chaos. News about human biology spread across the station faster than anyone expected. Within 48 hours, every alien on Concordia Prime knew that humans did not have a mating season. The information was shared in cafeterias, whispered in corridors, and discussed in emergency meetings. Not everyone took the news. Well, Vexara was walking to her morning class when she noticed a group of Dralith workers installing a new sign outside the engineering department. The sign read, "Human Interaction Protocols in Effect." She stopped to read the smaller text below. It explained that all personnel should maintain a minimum distance of 2 meters from human colleagues during work hours. Physical contact was discouraged unless absolutely necessary. Any unusual human behavior should be reported to station security immediately. Vexara felt her scales flush with embarrassment. This was ridiculous. She found Corvin in the biology lab, staring at a data screen with wide, compound eyes. Have you seen the new protocols? She asked him. I have, Corvin clicked. His antennae were drooping, which meant he was unhappy. The Dralith High Council issued them last night. They are treating humans like they are dangerous animals. But they are not dangerous, Vexara said. Jake explained it to me. Humans have self-control. They do not act on every impulse. I know that, Corvin said. You know that. But the council is frightened. They do not understand, so they make rules. It was not just the Dralith. Other species were reacting in their own ways. The Melocs had requested separate work schedules, so they would not have to share spaces with humans. The Vocari had issued a formal statement expressing concern about human biology. Even the normally calm Deshan administrators were holding emergency meetings to discuss safety measures. Vexara was frustrated. She had been frightened too, at first. But after talking to Jake and listening to Dr. Grant's lecture, she understood. Humans were different, yes, but different did not mean dangerous. She decided to do something about it. That afternoon, she went to Commander Greg Powell's office. Commander Powell was the human security liaison for the station, a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He looked up when she entered. "Miss Vexara," he said. His voice was polite but weary. "What can I do for you?" "I want to help," she said. "I want to help people understand humans better." Powell leaned back in his chair and studied her. "That's kind of you," he said. "But I'm not sure what one student can do. The other species are scared. When people are scared, they don't listen to reason. They will listen to facts," Vexara insisted. "They will listen to science." Dr. Grant gave a wonderful lecture, but it only reached the students who were there. "We need to share that information more widely." Powell was quiet for a moment. Then a small smile appeared on his face. "You know," he said, "you might be onto something. We've been so busy trying to calm down the diplomats that we haven't thought about education. Maybe that's the wrong approach." "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe we shouldn't be defending ourselves," Powell said. "Maybe we should be teaching, showing people who humans really are, not who they imagine us to be." He stood up and walked to his window. Outside, the stars stretched across the black void of space. Concordia Prime floated among them, a small island of life in an endless sea. "I'll talk to Dr. Grant," Powell said, "and the Academy administrators. Maybe we can organize something bigger. A cultural exchange. A chance for aliens to ask questions and get real answers." "I would like to help with that," Vexara said immediately. Powell turned back to her and nodded. "I'd appreciate that, Miss Vexara. Having an alien voice supporting us would mean a lot." Over the next few weeks, things began to change. The Academy organized a series of events called Understanding Humans. There were lectures about human history and society. There were demonstrations of human art and music. There were question and answer sessions where aliens could ask anything they wanted without fear of judgment. Vexara attended every session. She took notes. She asked questions. And she started writing. Her research paper began as a class assignment, but it quickly grew into something much larger. She interviewed Jake and his friends. She spoke to Dr. Grant and Commander Powell. She gathered data from dozens of human sources and combined it with her own observations. The paper was titled Human Pair Bonding, Beyond Biological Imperatives. In it, she argued that the lack of a mating season had shaped human society in profound ways. Without seasonal pressures, humans had developed complex courtship rituals based on compatibility rather than timing. They had created concepts like romance, dating, and long-term partnership. They had built societies where males and females worked together year-round, combining their strengths instead of separating them. "The human approach to reproduction is not a weakness," she wrote in her conclusion. "It is an adaptation that has allowed them to develop one of the most complex and successful civilizations in the galaxy. Their freedom from biological cycles has given them the ability to plan, create, and innovate without interruption." She submitted the paper to Professor Thelrix, expecting feedback and corrections. What she got, instead, was a message, summoning her to the Academy President's office. The president was a Volcari elder named Kethrol. He was ancient, with feathers that had faded from silver to white. His eyes were still sharp, though, and they studied Vexara carefully as she entered. "Your paper has been circulated among the faculty," Kethrol said. His voice was like rustling leaves. "It has caused quite a reaction." Vexara felt her scales go cold. Was it inappropriate? Did I say something wrong? "On the contrary," Kethrol said. "Your paper has been praised as one of the most insightful pieces of xenosociology written by a student in decades. The biology department wants to publish it. The cultural exchange office wants to use it as educational material. Vexara stared at him. She was not sure she had heard correctly. You have done something remarkable, Kethril continued. You have taken your fear and confusion and turned it into understanding. That is the true purpose of education. I just wanted to learn, Vexara said quietly, and to help others learn. And you have succeeded, Kethril said. Your paper will be required reading for all students in the exchange program. It will help them understand humans in a way that lectures and protocols never could. Vexara left the president's office in a daze. Her paper. Required reading. For the entire exchange program. She had come to Concordia Prime, confused and frightened by humans. She had asked awkward questions and received shocking answers. And somehow, through all of that, she had created something valuable. She found Jake waiting for her outside the administration building. He was smiling. I heard the news, he said. Congratulations. Thank you, Vexara said. I could not have done it without your help, without your patience. You did the hard work, Jake said. All I did was answer some weird questions. Vexara laughed. It was a strange sound, a hissing that most humans found alarming. But Jake just smiled wider. You know, he said, when you first asked me about mating seasons, I thought it was the strangest conversation I'd ever had. But now I think it might have been one of the most important. Why is that? Because it started all of this, Jake said. He gestured at the station around him. The lectures, the events, your paper. People are actually talking to each other now, instead of just being scared. Vexara nodded. It was true. The tension on the station had eased considerably over the past few weeks. The ridiculous protocols had been quietly removed. Aliens and humans were working together again, talking together, learning together. All because of one awkward question about mating seasons. It was funny how the universe worked sometimes. 6 months had passed since the lecture that changed everything. Vexara stood in the grand hall of the Galactic Union Academy, her scales gleaming under the ceremonial lights. Around her, hundreds of students from dozens of species had gathered for the annual graduation celebration. The air was filled with the sounds of different languages, the rustle of feathers, the clicking of mandibles, and the soft murmur of human conversation. She was not graduating herself. She still had 2 more years of study ahead of her. But she had been invited to speak at the ceremony as a special guest. Her paper on human pair bonding had become famous. It had been translated into 47 languages. It was being taught in schools across 12 star systems. Academics were writing responses and follow-up studies. A Melox professor had even started a new field called Human Social Dynamics based on her research. All of this still felt unreal to Vexara. She was just a student who had asked a strange question. She had never expected to become an expert on anything. But here she was, about to address the most important academic gathering of the year. She looked out at the crowd and spotted familiar faces. Jake Morrison was sitting near the front with Ben Tucker and Amy Chun. All 3 of them were smiling at her encouragingly. Dr. Lisa Grant sat with the faculty, her expression calm and proud. Commander Powell stood near the back, watching with the careful eyes of a security officer. Even Professor Thelrix was there, his silver feathers freshly preened for the occasion. Academy. President Kethril stepped up to the podium and raised a wing for silence. Friends and colleagues, he said in his rustling voice, we gather today to celebrate achievement and growth. We celebrate the students who have completed their studies and will now go forth to serve the galaxy. But we also celebrate something else. He paused and looked at Vexara. We celebrate understanding. 6 months ago, this station was in chaos. A simple biological fact about humans had caused fear and confusion among our people. Some called for separation. Some called for restrictions. Some whispered that humans were too different, too strange, too dangerous to be trusted. Catherine's eyes swept across the crowd. But instead of giving in to fear, we chose to learn. We chose to ask questions and listen to answers. And one young student led the way. He gestured toward Vexara. I present to you Vexara of Vesha, author of Human Pair Bonding, Beyond Biological Imperatives, and our guest speaker for this evening. The hall erupted in applause. Well, not exactly applause. It was a mixture of clapping, clicking, whistling, and stomping that served as the galactic equivalent of applause. The sound was strange and wonderful. Vexara walked to the podium on shaking legs. She had practiced her speech many times, but standing in front of so many people was still terrifying. She took a deep breath and began. 6 months ago, I asked a human male when his mating season began. A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. Even the humans were smiling. It was an innocent question, Vexara continued. On my world, it would have been a normal thing to ask. But the answer I received changed my understanding of the universe. She looked at Jake. He gave her a small nod. Humans do not have a mating season. They are capable of reproduction at any time of year. When I first learned this, I was shocked. I was confused. I was, if I'm honest, a little bit afraid. She paused to let her words settle. I thought that humans must be slaves to their biology. That without the structure of seasons, they must be constantly distracted by desires and impulses. I thought they must be chaotic, unpredictable, dangerous. Another pause. I was wrong. Vexara straightened her spine and lifted her head. What I discovered instead was that humans have developed something remarkable. They have developed self-control. They have developed the ability to feel attraction without acting on it. They have developed the freedom to choose when and how and with whom they form bonds. She gestured broadly at the audience. Most of us in this room are bound by biological cycles. Our bodies tell us when to seek mates, when to reproduce, when to focus on other things. We have accepted this as natural, as the way things must be. But humans have shown us a different path. Her voice grew stronger. Humans form relationships based on compatibility, not timing. They choose partners based on shared values and mutual respect. They build bonds that can last for decades, not because biology demands it, but because they want to. She looked at Ben and Amy, who were holding hands. I used to wonder how humans survived without a mating season, Vexara said. Now I wonder how they developed such beautiful, complex relationships because of it. She turned back to the full audience. I have learned many things during my time on this station. I have learned about human history and human art and human science. But the most important thing I have learned is this. Different does not mean dangerous. Strange does not mean bad. And the things that frighten us most are often the things we simply do not understand. Vexara smiled, her scales shifting to a warm shade of green. Humans are terrifying, she said. They come from a death world. They eat poison. They keep predators as pets. And yes, they can reproduce at any time of year. She let the laughter die down before continuing. But humans are also wonderful. They are kind and curious and patient. They answer strange questions without judgment. They share their knowledge and their culture and their friendship with anyone who asks. She looked at Jake one more time. I came here to study alien species. I expected to learn facts and figures and biological data. Instead, I learned that the most important thing in the galaxy is not what makes us different, but how we choose to respond to those differences. She stepped back from the podium and bowed her head. Thank you. The hall exploded with sound. Students stood up from their seats. Faculty members nodded with approval. Somewhere in the crowd, Corvin was clicking so loudly that his translator could not keep up. Vexara walked off the stage in a happy daze. Jake was waiting for her at the bottom of the steps. "That was amazing," he said. "You're a natural speaker." "I was terrified," Vexara admitted. "Couldn't tell at all," Jake said with a grin. They walked together toward the reception area, where food and drinks were being served. Other students stopped to congratulate Vexara or ask her questions about her research. She answered as best she could, but her mind was elsewhere. She was thinking about how much had changed in 6 months. She had arrived on this station as a nervous exchange student who knew nothing about humans. Now she was a published researcher who had helped reshape galactic understanding of an entire species. And it had all started with one awkward question. "Jake," she said suddenly, "may I ask you something?" "Of course. Do humans really go on dates just for fun? With no intention of reproduction?" Jake laughed. "Yeah, we do. Sometimes people just enjoy spending time together, getting to know each other, having new experiences." Vexara considered this. "That sounds nice," she said. "It is nice," Jake agreed. "Would you like to try it sometime?" Vexara's scales turned a bright, startled blue. "Are you asking me on a date?" "Only if you want to," Jake said quickly. "No pressure. No biological imperatives. Just two friends getting dinner and seeing where things go." Vexara stared at him for a long moment. Then she laughed, that strange hissing sound that no longer alarmed anyone who knew her. "Humans are terrifying," she said. "And wonderful." "Yes, Jake Morrison. I would like to try a date." Jake smiled, and together they walked into the reception hall, where the future was waiting for them both. Above them, the stars continued their endless journey through the void. Somewhere among those stars, humans and aliens were learning to understand each other, one awkward question at a time. And that, Vexara thought, was the best kind of progress the galaxy could ask for.